Hello, thanks to everyone for coming out today, and thank you to 376, aren't we? 376 for putting this on. These have been really interactive and fun conversations. They're very laid back. I would like to thank the elders past and present, and I'm Jacqueline Haynes and the founder of Vavven. So we're a quirky social enterprise that creates philanthropists through orgasms. So what that means is that we sell sex toys, they're body safe and they're ethically manufactured, and we raise funds and awareness for sexual, reproductive and health and rights. So there's quite a lot of, no, we're not going, there we go. There's quite a lot of different causes under that large umbrella. We deem business as just a tool. It's agnostic. It's not positive or negative. It's what you do with the business that can have the positive or negative impact on society and on the economy. Our focus is predominantly society rather than economy, but money is still important. We're a political brand, as most, every social enterprise is actually a political brand, because what you're doing is you're pushing back against the capitalist system and you're saying there's a different way to go around this and we can redistribute the inequality of luck. We're a sort of a bit of a hyped up political brand because we operate within the sex industry. So the industry that we're operating in and the causes that we're championing require legislative changes both here and abroad, and we're not backwards in coming forward and talking about them. A lot of startups enter the space and they do it with technology to be able to disrupt. As I said, our disruption method is business. But one of the things that's quite intriguing about this disruption that's happening with technology is we're seeing this larger and larger gap that's occurring between technology and the human. So as the widget's getting extremely whiz-bang and creative, the human is still the base element that we've been for hundreds, thousands of years. And we're not advancing as quickly, and we definitely see that in the sex industry. So I'm not here today my talk today is going to be a little bit different to some of the others. My objective is that by the end of the talk, I will have convinced one or two of you to join social enterprise or join the sex industry. So, does anybody know what this is? It's not actually this colour, and Angela Merkel likes to frame it. No, it's the clitoris. So this part here, the head, is the part that I would hope most of you are familiar with, and it is on the external, on the vulva, out here. But the actual full structure of the clitoris is quite large. It's about the size of your palm, heads back into your body. The clitoris has a really interesting history, and we won't go into all of it, but for around about 200 years, it was the telltale sign that you were a witch. So you obviously didn't want anyone looking under the hood. But when it came to 1947, the 25th edition of Gray's Anatomy, medical textbook, the clitoris went missing. Somebody got a little bit gung-ho and rubbed it out. And nobody noticed or nobody cared. And this raises a lot of questions about our society. How do we have a taboo enter a profession which is based on science and disrupt it in this way? So it actually turns out that this wasn't discovered until 20 years ago, and it was a Melbourne urologist, female, who mapped out the clitoris and found that it's 18 distinct structures. It's made of erectile tissue. So when the clitoris is erect, these legs that are running along here actually stretch back towards your spine for 5 to 9 centimetres. So it's actually quite a hearty beast. From not having a lot of research, we don't really understand this organ as much as we should. And we've found that surgeons are now doing experimental surgery where they've had great success, and they're being able to reverse genital mutilation. So that's just one of the positives of doing research into the clitoris. Other areas where society and technology having a large gap is sex education. So here in Australia, we're pretty good at it, but we're nowhere near as good as what we need to be. We leave it mainly for the schooling system, and we look at it from a risk-based and a reproductive-based focus, rather than something that is going to be a lifelong pursuit, pleasurable, and all the other things that it can be. It's a little similar to handing over a calculus textbook in high school and expecting somebody to be able to do it, but never teaching them the fundamentals of maths before. And where this becomes a problem is with technology. We now have access to a lot of things. My generation and before, we filled that void through Friends and the movies. Now we have access to porn. And I'm not saying that there's a big problem with porn. It does have issues, obviously. But it is a fantasy-based realm, and in the absence of good sex education and the absence of good, strong sex values, we're having our sex education as a default from porn. Other areas where technology is really intriguing is the data that it's providing. We've never been able to have sociologists go to the bedrooms or be able to understand exactly the way we're thinking when it comes to sex. And this is just one interesting piece of data. This is the number of searches per month in Australia for the word Pornhub. And I couldn't possibly account for more than 1/8. So we're obviously thinking a lot about sex. So how did I end up as a middle-aged woman coming from heavy industry and now talking about sex? It's a long journey. It's the divergence of a love for religion and politics and engineering. But it starts from really just wanting to create an impact on society, making sure that when I leave, things are slightly better than when I came. It was 2 years in the planning, and we launched at the end of last year in November. In that time, we've measured ourselves on our impact in the sexual, reproductive and health rights area. We've campaigned on numerous campaigns, but we've also been able to make donation to a group called the Unmentionables. They're a Canadian charity who provide unmentionables to Syrian refugees in Greece. And those unmentionables are sanitary products, underwear, sex education, etc. What does the future hold? Well, looking for partnerships. So I need somebody who can fulfill my weaknesses. There's quite a few of them. And we'll also be looking for investment. We at the moment work in the product base, but we will be stepping into services, and that will be in the form of training in disability and sexuality, which is one of the most discriminated areas within the sector. We're stepping into sex tech by designing a device for prolapse to help people that suffer from prolapse. And there are a number of different forms. We're focusing on vaginal prolapse, and around about 50% of those that give birth will suffer prolapse in some form over the course of their life, either when they've first given birth or it'll come on later on in menopause, with changes with estrogen. And we will continue to speak out. So continue to campaign for all of the causes and look at interesting ways of doing that, ways of being able to capture imagination. So could it be that the next abortion debate we're all sending vibrators to Fred Nile to let him know that we want to be looked at? Could it possibly be that we're setting up fundraising situations where you fundraise with sex toys rather than chocolates and cookies, and have people start talking and wanting to be part of it? We're also going to speak out a lot more in the following year about social enterprise, which has not been our greatest focus this year. We've tried to keep ourselves alive, actually. But social enterprise, we're not in the traditional model of either a charity or being 100% money focused. So funding is really difficult. And it would be good to see that New South Wales moves in, takes steps similar to the Victorian government and makes this a little bit easier. We're here to learn and share, and I hope that you've learned a little bit about the clitoris and Australian porn habits. But we're also, I also want to just say that there's never going to be a good time to start. You're never going to have your perfect widget. There's always going to be problems in your world, so just jump. There's no other way of saying it. Make sure you've done a bit of due diligence, obviously, and don't invest too much, but take it for a road test. And the other thing is, don't be stupid like me and go it alone. I was warned by heaps of people not to do that, but I still did it, and I'm paying for it now. And it's probably the best learning that I could impart on you. Find somebody. They don't have to align 100%, but you can find people to work with, and it will help weather the storms. And e-commerce, I just write that down because you really need to start generating your traffic if you're going to step into e-commerce at least 6 months before you have a product. That's how long it's going to take. So is there room for you in the industry, either the social enterprise or sex tech? And the answer is most certainly. So if there's business of it, you can make social enterprise of it. I have friends that do it with socks, toilet paper, sanitary products, nappies, you name it, they're in there. So go and join them. But if you're not a hugely social-based person and you're very interested in technology, come across and look at sex tech. It's the next big thing. It is going to be where money can be made. It's always going to be difficult if you're an early adopter. But there are so many barriers that I've come up against in doing this, this business that are nothing more than a business opportunity for people that are interested. So I'll leave you with one more fact, and that is just that the vibrator was the 5th mass-produced electrical household item. It beat the toaster. So we've been thinking about sex for a good while. Thank you.
What was the heavy industry that you worked in previously, and what did you take from that experience that has informed this one?
So heavy industry was here locally, so dealing with different metal manufacturing. What I took were project management skills, dealing with difficult people, unusual people, and being able to just analyse. They're the things that I've carried across. So any industry that you've been in and you move to another industry, there's a lot that you can still carry across. But it has been quite a steep learning curve. I thought my sex knowledge was quite high, and it wasn't at all. And so I've entered sex industry, which was a new industry, but I've also entered e-commerce, and that was a completely new industry from anything that I'd done before.
I'm interested in a bit more about that journey from initial idea through to, oh, now I've actually got a product that I'm selling online.
Yes, so that was really interesting. It took me far too long, but I think I needed to be able to formulate what I was trying to do in my own head. So it took 2 years, but it was like, how does this work? How will society take it? How can I actually create impact? How I ended up at sex toys was going and looking at a number of different industries, including the death industry. And I decided that the sex industry was one that was ripe for change. So there was a lot of objectification. There's no regulations for manufacturing. So it's very unregulated. So what you would buy and you think that it's body safe, not necessarily. There are a lot of really good suppliers out there that only stock body safe, but you do need to be careful. It's one of those it's one of the only areas where we don't want to talk about manufacturing standards. And yes, then it was, how do I create this? So it was going through the process of registering your name, getting your trademarks, which turned out to be quite interesting as well, because we had a trademark issue right before we went to launch and changed name, all of these sorts of things. So there's always been little problems to overcome all the way, but yes.
And so did you start with burning idea, or you knew you wanted to get into a social enterprise? And then
knew I wanted to get into a social enterprise, and then from researching the different industries, went into the sex industry. Yeah, and then teamed it up with sexual, reproductive and health rights, because there was a bit of irony with it, really. So one person's pleasure is helping another person's rights. Yeah.
So what was the greater opportunity between the sex industry and the death industry?
I think the death industry is going to be a good while before you can really make a lot of changes. There are a few in the space that are trying to make changes, but I also didn't have the money to be able to infiltrate that one as much as I would like to. It's very sensitive, more sensitive than sex. Yes.
What's your name referencing, the name of the business?
Vavven, it's a made up name with a lot of V's. The trademark lawyer did say, oh, there's a lot of V's, it conjures an image, and I said it's meant to.
What was the name you didn't get up, or how do you choose?
Vavven, I can't even say it now. Vavven, which was Swedish for the friend, a very close friend. So we flipped the N's upside down and created V's. So effectively gave ourselves 3 hours to stay within the same letter count, a large number, all small numbers, large letter, all small letters, and keep the same imagery, so we didn't have to pay to have everything rebranded. And we could have, we would have won that case if we wanted to pursue it, but it comes down to a bit of conscious capitalism. Is that where you want to spend your money? Is it where you want to spend your effort? And I hadn't actually launched, so no, it wasn't. I thought there were bigger fish to fry, and if I was giving money away, I'd prefer it to be to the cause than a lawyer.
How do you get your name out there? How do you become the one that they find when there's so many people looking for vibrators? How do they find you?
Okay, well that's a good question, because you can't market in the sex industry like you can in many other industries, so that's very difficult. We're immoral. But search engine optimization is extremely important, and that's why why I'm looking for somebody to really help on that side of things. There's only so far you can go with paying others to do it and doing it yourself. Being creative, so free media is quite achievable. So a lot of newspapers and magazines are relatively liberal, and they do like what's behind our business model. Like, they like what we're actually trying to do. We're trying to use business to be political, and most people are really scared of using business and being political.
I was going to ask, have you had a better response, I guess, from other countries compared to Australia?
I get a lot of traffic from India and a lot of traffic from America. Yeah. Yes, but as for response, most of the sales are here in Australia. We do ship internationally, but then there's an international shipping fee. So most of our sales are here in Australia, but the Unmentionables, for instance, the group that we donated to, they found us online and they submitted. So we were trying to work with some other groups, and it became quite difficult, whereas these guys were much easier to work with.
You spoke about regulation and compliance first in the sort of manufacturing and how there isn't a lot of that, but then in the marketing where you are constrained because it's immoral. Was that something that was apparent when you were doing your due diligence? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I very much understood the government likes to be in your bed to stop you from doing things, but not necessarily to keep you safe. So yes, well, we have all sorts of really strange laws here in New South Wales. For instance, if you just look at porn, it's legal to buy it and watch it, unless you're on certain Aboriginal reserves, but it's illegal to sell it. So you cannot sell porn in New South Wales. And that does create issues because there are many different genres of, it's like getting books or whatever it may be. So I'm not advocating everybody run out there and get porn, I might add. We don't engage in it because we think it's prescriptive. So it's not in our business model, but we don't have anything against it.
Can you talk a bit more about some of those regulations, like particularly with manufacturing? Have you tried to change any of them in any way?
Yes, I've made contact and I've been loud, but we do need to push even harder. So what you have is that there's a whole history behind vibrators moving out of this, well, any sex toy moving out of the domain of being used for body and being classified as a novelty toy, so that it can get round a whole heap of laws about sort of the moral laws that exist. There are certain states in America, for instance, where you can't even sell a sex toy or own one. So it's not just it's all across the world. And once they've moved out of that domain and they're for novelty, you're not meant to put them on your body, even though they are effectively marketed in that way. So here in Australia, we're quite good with our electrical laws, and they're still covered electrically, but not materials or form mechanically.
And so how did you begin that process of actually understanding what the regulations are?
Well, regulations was as per any other part of engineering. You go to standards, you read, you look at things, but...
And that information's easy to find, or...?
No, it's not. No, it's definitely not. And then I put together a team of people to do a risk assessment on every single product that we stocked. And that was really interesting, learning about all the ways that people could potentially use this item. Some of them I was a bit, oh, hello. But they're important, you have to understand, so that you can say, well, this definitely is not for this particular thing, or whatever it may be. So we also send out a safety card with our products, so that people sit down and have a little read and learn, because most of the, I think it's 20% of sex toy issues that present at hospital are actually due to, you're covering your face there, are due to issues with anal sex with sex toys. And yeah, simple education can solve a lot of these things. You're looking at anal toys, for instance, your anus has a double sphincter, which is really interesting from an engineering point of view. Not many parts of your body have that. So if you actually push past that second one, you can get what's called anal suck, and it's heading north and it's not coming back, so hightail it to hospital, because somebody's got to get it out. And the reason why they talk about having a flared base or having a string is it's a proximity warner, so hopefully alarm bells go off when it's getting a little close. But if they don't, you also, that's pretty much all the emergency people are able to grab onto to pull out, so that hopefully they don't have to cut your bowel. It can be very serious. People end up with colostomy bags for these sorts of issues. And they're kept quiet because we're all afraid. And there's no age or ethnicity or religion or anything that defines who uses sex toys. That's the most interesting part of this business. You get to sit on the other end where you see the data and you go, wow, it's across the board.
So is there no standards Australia?
Not for sex toys, no. No. If you were to manufacture something that was called a medical grade, then yes, you would. And you would also need to go to TGA, etc., and be approved down those lines. Why not? That's a great question. It is crazy, yeah.
Wow. So we have them for like toys to stop kids from swallowing.
There's certain materials that you can't make kids' toys out of, but you will still find those materials on the shelves as sex toys. And your the areas where you place them are relatively porous. So.
And that was one of the angles you had with your business model, was when you talk about stocking product that's
body safe.
Right.
Yes.
So that means the materials that are
So
being used.
body safe means that we've looked at the materials, we've looked at its function. So part of your safety card will say, well, this is definitely not for a particular type of use. And we also look at electricity, the electrical standards, yeah. So it means that we are pushed into a higher price bracket, but we don't feel comfortable with selling things that are not where they should be. We're actually pushed into the higher price bracket from selling body safe products, not from selling ethically manufactured products. It just happens that most people that sell the body safe are also interested in making them in an ethical manner.
Right, and so what do you mean by ethically?
Ethically manufactured means that we go through a bit of a questionnaire with the manufacturers. We go back 2 levels, so we don't go all the way to packaging or anything like this, because some of that is really, really difficult to chase up. And we look at are people held against their will. Do they live at the actual factories? If they do, which is not uncommon, but if they do, can they come and go? Do they have freedom of association? So we do have a couple of, we do work with a couple of suppliers that their products are manufactured in China, so they definitely can't have freedom of association. It's just not something you can have in China. We look at age. So what age do they start employing people? Do they have decent wages? And most importantly to us, do they have access to safety? Yeah. So we just object to selling something that creates pleasure from somebody else's misery.
And do you go out and visit those factories?
We will, over the next 18 months, we will pop in. It's a little bit of a difficult situation as well, because I come from an engineering base. Lots of people are really scared to go through this process with us, because they have this feeling that you'll go and you'll just make your own toys with their manufacturers and you cut them out, which is a bit of a crazy way of looking at it, because I would have been able to find that information without them telling me. Like, that's a bit stupid. But you're building a relationship with these people, and all of them have been fantastic in the end to work with. But part of the agreement is we're able to go and audit their factories, and if it happened that they haven't told us the full truth, then we'll fess up and say, sorry, we've been selling something that we shouldn't have been selling, and we'll publicise it. Yep. And we're not looking for 100%. We're looking for creating a change. So this is an industry where nobody's asked for ethical manufacturing before. So you do fashion, number of different areas have been looking into this, but definitely not the sex industry. So we're interested in working with companies. How can we improve their standards, rather than just saying we wouldn't work with you? We have a couple of no deals, but we try and work with people. Yeah.
So what do you think are some of the challenges that face a social enterprise, more than just, say, a standard startup? Not that there's a standard startup, but...
Yep. Just a social enterprise by itself, and ignore the sex industry. The biggest issue is funding. So you don't fit the traditional 100% charity, so a lot of grants aren't available. But you also don't fit the just championing a financial return. So you don't have the same investors at that end as well. So you really need to gain more angel investment, and then you've got to be careful, because a lot of that investment comes with their own personal belief in something. So they're putting money into you for X, Y, or Z. We did have one investor that was quite keen on working with us, but the causes that we were championing were not the same as what they were looking to champion at that point in time.
So what has that journey been like, looking for other angel investors? Because it's a pretty specific type of investor that you're looking for.
I haven't looked too hard. I've had a lot of people approach me, and they're the ones that I've talked to, but that's part of our future, is that we need to go out and we need to really make those networks and start pushing that, because we do need investment to be able to take this to a level where we can actually market to penetrate.
And have you
I realised how poor that was when it came out.
Have you outlined that roadmap and what type of money you'd actually need going forward?
No, I haven't. But it's what I need to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you had any backlash, or not necessarily backlash, but people in the sex industry already, or other companies and stuff, giving you a hard time?
I wouldn't say a hard time,
Yeah.
but you don't make friends very easily when you walk into a room and go, hey, you guys are all shit. Because they're not, and we actually don't say that. There is a really large sector that are not doing what we consider the right thing, but there are some amazing ones out there that are doing great things. So they may not be they may not be adhering to all of our values, but you've got here in Charlestown, there's Minx, for instance. They sell body safe products and they do it in a very open and encompassing way. Down in Victoria, you've got Passion Fruit. In Sydney, you've got Black Max. They're all really good outlets. They don't abide by all of our values, but they're still fantastic, yeah. And out of interest, there's only 3 of us in the world that are doing this social enterprise model with sex toys. So 2 of us launched a week apart from each other, a group in Denver and us. The group in Denver are Vibrant, and they work directly with Planned Parenting. And Family Planning Association in London launched a year or more before us, and they are a branch. So it's like Betty White went and started a sex toy store. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
So on that point, have you entertained the thought of partnerships with a similar organisation in Australia?
Yes, so I've spoken to 2 of them. The difficulty lies in that although they champion the same political changes, they don't do it in such a liberal way. And so we are a little bit in your face. So, and we don't apologise for that. Yeah. So for somebody to come on board, they really need to be able to trust us. And we haven't found the group that is willing to back us at that level yet.
So when you say that you are much more liberal in your approach, taking the subject of sex out of the equation, does that still apply? Your liberal approach to sex education or support, like as a social enterprise?
Sorry,
like,
I don't quite.
The liberal nature of what it is that you're doing related to the fact that you're selling sex products, or is it?
It's more towards what we're championing.
Or what you're trying to change?
Yes.
Yeah.
So for instance, here in New South Wales, abortion is part of the criminal code, and it is the same in Queensland. We're very outspoken about that. We're quite happy to say that our money will service people in need elsewhere. There's a whole group that campaign against that type of activity, and that makes it very difficult for charities to survive if they're cutting off this very loud group of potential donors. Yeah, but they need to change in their thought processes if they really will, because just the whole way of generating money is going to change over the coming years when we're not donating levels that we used to already. So charities do need to think very differently about how they're going to gain their funds, and that may be that you can't appease everyone. You have to look at what you're really true to and push down that line. Mm.
So, really big professional change for you? What have you
Just
found-
a bit.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
What have you found to be the most fulfilling part of the journey?
I think my own personal learning, as selfish as that sounds. I have learnt a lot, and I do love to learn all the time. It's not sort of fulfilling in the learning, but also disappointing, understanding just how much taboos have infiltrated our society and made such subtle changes that are so big. So the industries that thrive on things like sexual dysfunctions, they wouldn't exist if we were open around sexuality and were able to talk. For instance, like you'll hear it on the radio all the time, or you'll see it on signs about premature ejaculation and how you can be fixed. In all my reading, I haven't found anything that says you've got to go for 3 minutes and 47 seconds or whatever it is. So there isn't a time limit. So this whole dysfunction is very abstract. But that would be the thing that I've enjoyed the most. It's my personal learning and relaying a lot of things to my kids and watching their face. That's been terribly amusing. But they do have a very similar personality to myself, and yes. Hmm.
How many employees have you got?
Just me, full time. Yes. So contracted in people to do different parts, but yeah, it is just me. So I package and I do all of those things, and I go to the post office and I send them off. And well, actually, I don't go to the post office. Somebody comes and picks things up, but yes. And that's part of why we need funding, because even though we've paid people to write articles and things like that, one person just can't do it all. So you're trying to run logistics of a business, but you're also trying to understand legislation and come up with new marketing ideas and be able to campaign heavily. You can't, there just aren't enough hours in any one day. Mm.
Well, does anyone else have any more questions? Well, we might wrap it up there. Thanks so much, Jack.
Thank
for
you.
your time today.